Hi everyone, thanks for joining. We'll be starting in just 1 minute. Hi everyone, thanks for joining. Just to let you know that this webinar will be recorded and will be approximately 45 minutes in length. All attendees are muted, but if you have any questions, you can enter them in the chat control in the control panel, and we'll endeavour to answer all of them at the end of the session. If there's anyone out there that currently can't hear me, hopefully they can read the text and know that you can raise any audio issues in the chat control. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to Robert and Steve, who will take you through industry trends, observations in the field, and putting technology to work for you. Over to you, Steve.
Tom, thank you so much for the intro, for getting the project process started this morning. Good morning, everybody. My name is Steve Cassio. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at ShopVue. Prior to ShopVue, I spent 10 years at SAP and a number of years at IBM prior to that. Spent the last 20 years in the software industry in a variety of roles and services and sales, and really look forward to today's presentation. I'm joined by Robert Ottenhoff. Robert will be participating and presenting ATS's strategic framework for delivering digital transformation for their customers, and he really supports the markets here in North America. And we're very excited to be working together and presenting some content to all of you today. So let's jump right in if we could. Today's presentation is going to focus on 4 key areas. And as we look at the landscape of analytics, I know what everybody says is there's just so much out there. There's so many tools. Where do I start? And that's really what the basis of today's presentation is to try to give everybody a ground set of where to start, how to walk, crawl, walk, run with analytics to put it to use for your operations. So the 4 areas we'll focus on today, number 1 will be which critical analytics are you overlooking operationally? The second will be how to create successful data model to spark that digital transformation, because data is not just about collecting data for a single use point. It's about collecting data that can be used holistically to make operational decisions. The third thing we'll jump into will be what analytics leading organizations and how you can be a leader too, meaning, what are companies using to drive success through analytics, and how can you do the same? And lastly, we'll jump into transforming your organization, not just spinning your wheels with more flashy tools. As we all know, there's so much out there today. And if you look at the chart on the right, an interesting point here, big data. So according to LNS research, for those of you who are familiar with LNS, they're a manufacturing digital transformation consulting firm and analysts such as a Gartner, Forrester, etc. They do a great job in this space. According to LNS, 14% of those companies surveyed said big data analytics is the single most overhyped technology in the manufacturing space. There's so much out there, so it's easy to understand how people feel that way. But I think what's important is, if for those of you that are over the hype and sick of sort of the noise and all the junk analytics based upon bad data, you're in the right place. We want to kind of give you a roadmap and some good data points to walk away from today, to take home back to your plant and figure out, how can I put this to use for me? For those of you who are ready to have access to the right data at the right time, we're glad you're here as well. You're in the right place as well. There's just, during the session, we're going to be talking about really practical examples of how you can manage massive amounts of data and put it to work for you. So let's jump into topic number 1. Which critical analytics are you overlooking? What's incredible to see right now is there's over a terabyte of data and counting every day at a plant, right? That's going to multiply by 5 to 10 times over the next 5 years. So that tells you right out of the gate, manual processes, spreadsheets, localized access databases, etc., are not going to get it done for you. we need to help you do better. You want to do better as well, so that you can put that data to work for you. So let's jump into a couple of topics here. Which of the following metrics does your company track? This is important. So LNS as research, along with a number of other industry firms, have done a good job of tracking what drives manufacturing customers. What type of metrics are they capturing? The top three tend to be the same, no matter which poll you look at. It's on-time delivery, because that's customer facing, that's bottom line. Overall equipment effectiveness. If your equipment's not running and it's not running efficiently, you're not making product as quickly as you can or as efficiently as you can. And the last one is inventory turns, and that's an interesting one to take a look at, because it's in flux. This raw materials coming in, finished goods going out. But the key is not to try to boil the ocean and track every metric you can. The key is to know which metrics are the most helpful to run your business. So the best way to reach a continuous improvement model is to be selective. Pick the right metrics for your business, and it may be per line, per work center, per shift, right? Understand what those finite details mean, and then look at the metrics from that perspective. All right, let's jump into the next slide. This is pretty interesting. And I see this when I go on to different manufacturing tours with my customers in a variety of industries. 80% of organizations that have an analytics initiative don't have a strategy. What that tells me is there's a lot of departmental, a lot of operational, silos of information, silos of data, silos of tools helping collect data that are not feeding a broader data strategy. And that's really, I think, where we want to take a look at and see if we can help your organization in some way. So we're going to try to keep this interactive, folks. We're going to ask you a couple of poll questions. We do ask that you participate, and we'll go into the first poll question of the session. So Tom, do you mind taking over and popping that poll up to the screen?
There, I hope you can all see that.
Right. So as you guys take a minute to fill that poll out, we appreciate your feedback. What we're going to do is take a look at what you tell us this morning versus what we're finding through some research with our partners like LNS and Forrester, Gartner, and the folks that spend their lives studying this type of information and ultimately helping customers figure out how that information best pertains to them. So we'll take another 10 seconds and we'll take a look at the results, and then we'll jump into what the analysts are saying and see how you guys stacked up. So going on 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, Tom, what have we got for results?
There you go.
All right, could you maybe speak to them a little bit, Tom? I'm not seeing them on my side. I think
I'm very sorry.
That's quite
all
right.
We're looking at 20% descriptive, 50%, quite the majority there, diagnostic, and another 20% predictive, with just 10% saying none of the above. No one has gone for prescriptive.
Interesting. All right, well then let's see how that stacks up to our friends at LNS. So if we take a look at what they found, pretty interesting models here, and actually not at all that different, right? So in 2018 versus 2020, customers really grew from 27 to 43% descriptive, 30% to 61% diagnostic. So a little bit higher percentage, 61 to 43. We'll stick with the blue. 35 to 58. So we're not too different. And then you've got prescriptive down at 32. So the audience actually somewhat mirrors this trend as you see here, and that's okay. I think that means customers are taking heed and they're looking at what's happening in the industry. So when we look at descriptive analytics, ultimately that's telling you what's happened in the past, right? It's giving you that rear view mirror look, maybe things that you could learn from and improvements you can apply going forward. When we look at diagnostic, ultimately that's helping you understand why something is happening or why it happened in the past. And if we look at predictive, it's ultimately trying to help you predict what's going to happen in the future based upon past performance, past results, past transactions. And then prescriptive ultimately is helping, using machine learning. I'm not surprised that is the lower one. That's really leveraging AI and machine automation, et cetera. We're seeing more of that now. It is definitely becoming more commonplace, but it is certainly still a little bit on the bleeding edge with most of the customers that we work with. So the next question is ultimately which roles in your organization have access to the data at the right time to make a difference. So when we do the polls out there, we look at industry leaders and followers. The trends are pretty clear. The three departments that typically have the most access to data at the right time to make decisions are operations managers. That makes perfectly good sense. IT and business analysts understand that as well, and supervisors. So when we look at those numbers, the question I always ask is, okay, what are the other 45 to 46%? Because you can see 54%, 55, 54. What do the rest of the folks do? Are they okay with reactionary data, reactionary access to data, excuse me, so that they can look at historical reports? The answer might be yes, but it may also be that they haven't figured out yet how to get the right resources and the right people to drive the analytics that they need to have real-time success. And that's where we'll spend a little bit of time here today. So as we move into the next step, we're going to look at how do you create a successful data model to spark digital transformation. So going back to one of the slides earlier, silos of data. My manufacturing engineering team has their little reporting dashboard tool. My inventory control warehouse, they have their reporting tool. But how do we put a data model in place to spark transformation to give you the true benefit of visibility? So Forrester's got a good tool out there, and I've always found Forrester to be do a great job of collecting trends across multiple industries and multiple software columns, if you will. So you've got your ERP, your PLM, QMS, and MES systems. We're going to talk about MES mostly today, but 60 to 73% of data within an enterprise goes unused. It could be used for transactional reporting. It could be sitting in a silo, or it's just simply not being represented in operational excellence. I personally have had the pleasure of working with Bob Hansen. Bob is the CEO of Hutchinson North America. He is a fact-based, data-driven individual. And over the past few years, we've worked tremendously with him to really help him collect data from both his operators, his people on the plant floor, and his machines, so that he could use that data to build dashboards and focus the team's processes and improve their workflows to ultimately yield better quality and better on-time delivery. He's been an incredible champion of ours, and if those of you want to watch a previous webinar that we've done with Bob on the ShopVue website, it is up there for viewing. It is ShopVue.com. So feel free to take a look at that. Now, let's look at your plant. This is a really cool tool to give you a good representation of what a manufacturing environment might look like. The biggest barrier to a successful analytic strategy is trust, right? Look at the data sources you've got here. That's all the little the beeping symbols. You've got data coming from machines, from people, from production lines, from sensors, right? So how do you trust that information to know that it's feeding you quality information to make decisions? So by using a data collection software tool for our people, I'll focus on these folks. They need to have a really simple, easy to use interface to enter information in real time so that they're not spending time on the keyboard, they're not spending time touching the screen, they're actually doing work. Right, so it needs to be a simple platform, and ShopVue definitely helps with that. We'll talk more about that later. The other key is getting incremental data as it happens, right? Getting incremental data to keep it timely, so that the systems that you work with, whether it's MES or PLM or PLC SCADA systems, they are doing constant calculations to give you real-time feeds onto how you're executing in the plant. All right, topic number 3, what analytics are leading organizations using, and how can you be a better leader too? I think it's a great segue into understanding how to build a data-driven culture. That's the key. You need to have a company culture that says, I want to make decisions based on data and based on fact. Do you have the right data where you need it? And that's where we're going to talk a lot about some of the things that we see in the industry today. So again, going back to LNS to some of their research, the top 3 metrics customers I mentioned earlier are looking for: on-time delivery, net profit margin, and overall equipment effectiveness. they tend to lead the pack, right? So if you see them up here, but there are many other areas that are critically important to analytics leaders and analytics followers. Being a follower is not a bad thing. I had one customer of mine when I was at SAP, they called themselves fast followers. They didn't want to be at the bleeding edge or the leading edge. They wanted to be right behind so that they could learn from the mistakes of others just ahead of them. And I always thought that that was a pretty interesting perspective on how to look at technology and operations. And in fact, I think it's a pretty safe one. But they push themselves to stay close to those leaders and get up to the front. So I'll give you a couple examples of some dashboards that our ShopVue customers use, just so you can see a little bit about what the tools might look like. We've got things like machine overall equipment effectiveness, where you can actually shift your culture to talk with data, like Bob Hansen Bob Hansen, excuse me, at Hutchinson does, where he's looking at real-time information to drive business decisions. Another good one is on-time completion, being able to represent that information in a number of different ways. And then lastly, for Bob again, he knew that a shop floor execution system, or an MES system, ShopVue, is effectively the framework, the neural network of how he builds his data strategy, because he's collecting all that information, pushing it through his MES system and out to his analytics strategy. And this is a great point to shift over to my colleague Robert, who is going to talk about some of the things that ATS Global has done for their customers, and taking technologies like the analytics dashboards that we've talked about, the MES platforms we've talked about, and putting it to work for you. So Robert, over to you, my friend.
Appreciate that, Steve. Thank you very much, and thank you for the insight so far. We'll get back with you shortly. But in the meantime, yeah, let's take a quick look at what we see today here in the manufacturing environment, working with our customers here. Is first of all, a lot of challenges, of course, as always in every environment, but a lot of them are in common, really also cross industry, as you can see on here. And the first one on here is demand for high quality. Now that is actually not new, right? Quality always always has been a critical factor. But what is new though is that because of today's, let's say, social media, it's just very easy to, let's say, spread comments around quality, especially damaging comments around poor quality. Get a bad Google review, and there you go, right? So that changes. So that is actually a challenge. So therefore, it's actually the pressure on continuing to provide, let's say, consistent high quality, even higher today. Then if we get into, let's say, regulatory compliancy, that is something that also we only see the lists of rules and regulations, we only see them growing, right? And then we get additional regulatory bodies on top of that. So not only regional, but also globally nowadays, we see that there's going to be not longer lists, but additional lists that we actually have to comply to in order for our products to be compliant. Of course, all from a safety standpoint. So from a consumer side, very much understandable, but it adds just pressure on the manufacturing environment. If we look at cost pressure, of course, that's always also the case. The production just has to be continue to be more efficient. Cost of raw materials is increasing. We have seen that over the last couple of months or years, especially with the inflation, but also with the disruption in supply chain. We just see that cost of raw materials is increasing. So we better make sure that with those raw materials, we utilize them as best as we can, because it's part of our resources. How can we utilize our resources as best as we can? The fast changing consumer demands is especially nowadays. So consumers would like to have, let's say, more customization. They would like to have, let's say, quicker their products. They would like to order smaller batches, etc. So rapidly changing consumer demands, because they actually figured out that they just can ask and the companies will just deliver, right? So this is like a vicious circle that you get into, but you always wanted to deliver to your customers' demands. Now, and that ties into the increasing variety of products and recipes, which, like, for example, previously there was just, let's say, smaller assortment of products, but right now customers, they want to try different new flavors. Competitors bring on new products into the market to stay competitive, you have to do kind of the same thing. So you introduce new products, but what it turns into is, let's say, smaller production runs, more changeovers, so a loss of efficiency, so more pressure on the overall, let's say, equipment effectiveness and the efficiency there. And then last but not least, as we can see, and it ties back into, let's say, the supply chain, this global setup, right? So we're trying to outsource part of our work to, let's say, other companies in other parts of the world in order to hopefully achieve some cost savings. But then on the other side of the balance, there's of course the additional cost of the supply chain, especially nowadays, based on the pandemic, even more challenging. So these are the challenges, but then from challenges, those basically turn into the requirements that we see. And then also from a requirement standpoint, where we actually see that if we were to move on to the next slide, that those are cross-industry, pretty much the same on a high level, right? So what we're looking for is speed. We've got to reduce the time to market. We got to be faster, and ideally, we got to be quicker than our competitors bringing new products in the market. Even though on the other end, we want to be quicker, but the level of complexity is also increasing. So it's a really, let's say, interesting and sometimes difficult balance to keep up with. So that's the speed, the flexibility. Well, the customers, as I mentioned, they would like to have their individualized products. It's really cool, but you get all these one-offs, right? So how do you handle that? And oh, by the way, they're not thinking about paying more for that, right? So they also want to pay the same price. So even though on the manufacturing standpoint, that is actually not the cost, is actually higher. So how are we going to handle that? And then quality, of course, as I mentioned, that quality always has to be the number one, as well as efficiency, because today, I mean, it's not only the product that needs to be sustainable, it needs to be environmentally friendly, but also, if you think about it, energy efficiency within the production, it becomes actually a competitive advantage as well. So also that in terms of efficiency, not only from an operational standpoint, also from an energy efficiency standpoint, very important. And again, also very current, whatever is with what is going on right now in the world. We all know, so energy prices are increasing. So if we can become more efficient, again, this is a resource. We want to be able to utilize our resources as best as we can. Now, moving into, let's say, how we can make sure to meet those requirements for the manufacturers that we work with. We established our own innovation center. It's called Atlas, top right, you can see that there. And what we do there is we just invest millions of dollars to bring fresh Industry 4.0 technologies to our customers. We want to be ahead of everything. We want to be able to help everyone move forward, stay ahead also. And our core objective in there is really to de-risk the technology, because it's always like, quite a burden. It is actually, it can be have quite some impact on an organization, but to de-risk that, right, technology through a design thinking process in there, this double diamond methodology that you can see, the discover, define, develop, all the way through deliver, is actually core and a key part of the design thinking process. We do leverage actually latest tools, develop, and we do that and we, in collaboration with the academic world, such that we can actually benefit also from all the developments that go on there, like the research that is taking place in universities, etc. So we're very happy, let's say, intertwined with that as well as with other not-for-profit organizations like MESA, for example. Some of the technologies you can see already on the left-hand side, we're actively implementing. 5G, very much upcoming right now, brings a lot of opportunities for manufacturers, and as well the industrial Internet of Things, IoT networking, as well as cloud computing. So what we basically do, tangible benefits, but the biggest takeaway is the fact that we collaborate with our customers and easing the introduction of technology. For example, a ShopVue MES in the manufacturing space, because we also understand the shop floor. So if we take a quick look at how that environment and platform could look like is, on a high level, it's divided into 4 different areas. The first area is Atlas Play. It provides depth and complexity in mapping business processes, and this is really a fundamental piece of that environment to help integrating new technologies like the ShopVue, MES, and new methodologies into existing manufacturing operations, because that manufacturing operation is already running, let's say, sometimes for decades, right? And now all of a sudden we want to be able to integrate new technologies. So how do we do that? By mapping business processes as a foundation to start from. The Boost area handles the data analytics. So tightly coupled with, for example, a ShopVue MES to crunch real-time data while it's collected by the sensors in your facility, and then processing and transforming that data to turn that into information. Then there's the edge side. It helps to realize a low latency connection between the manufacturing equipment and the cloud, because that's always, let's say, a hot topic, of course. Yeah, the manufacturing equipment, it is on site, okay, and then but a lot of, let's say, the new applications are actually in the cloud-based or hybrid form. So how do we make that connection? How can we feel comfortable with, let's say, a cloud application while we need, let's say, real-time response by our equipment that is actually on premise on the shop floor? So that's where Edge helps. And then last but not least, Optimize will add another layer of depth, and that's where we get into the machine learning and the artificial intelligence. Manufacturing processes can actually begin to make automated decisions, like alerting about shortages, surpluses, or even reporting on misallocations. So that is that from a high level standpoint. But if we move on, then we actually see that on this particular slide over here, who looks quite complex, right? This is just an example. Not all, by far all technologies here are mandatory, but this just gives an example of, let's say, a potential landscape, how that could look like. And then what you see there is it does not just give you visibility of your data. There's actually powerful software in there that handles cleansing, processing, and implementation of that data-driven insight, as Steve already mentioned, on a second-by-second basis. Actually, you can use advanced AI systems, and that makes data collection and cleansing and utilizing truly efficient. With the help of AI, it's actually possible to evaluate the data of your sensors and machines, and cleansing it as it is being collected. Really, AI can save hundreds of hours of work spent manually appraising thousands upon thousands of lines of data being processed, really at incredible speeds. And as you can see here, right, within this section, even though it just stopped flashing as I can see, but within the system architecture, in a solution like the ShopVue MES, it plays a key role right in the center of everything that is going on. And once I'm done, then Steve is going to tell you more about that in a minute. I'll give you some more insight in that, but you can see that it's like a key piece of the architecture. But again, Steve will get back to that real quick. So we'll move on to give you, let's say, some insight into what we've seen working with our customers here at ATS in our MES Excellence Centers, where we do integration and implementation of MES, as well as the wider manufacturing operations management, or MOM space, for pretty much all industries here. And the way that we do that actually is, for us, it's all about enabling manufacturers. And we do that through 5 different business activities, which really I don't want to get into right now. So those business activities on the top: consulting, projects, software development, support services, as well as training and workshops. But what is key is like a holistic approach, but also a phased approach. And that's kind of in the center here, where you see that. So you have your initial consultancy phase, very early on stage, to really find out what are business targets, business goals, but also what are your particular challenges. And then from there on, we will move into professional services, implementing the right tool that is right for your organization based on your business requirements. Once that's been done, then we move into more of a support mode, but not a reactive support mode, but very proactive support mode by benefits realization and really getting that ROI from that investment that you just did, getting new IT tool into your organization. So that's really important. So if we take a quick look on our next slide, we will see a little bit. Well, we see a lot of boxes there. Absolutely not going to address all of them because there is just one kind of bottom line message, which is also on the bottom of this slide, which says digital transformation. It's all about business transformation, and we'll have to keep that in mind. We saw already today quite the number of technologies flying by on the slides, quite a number of, let's say, softwares, etc. However, it's really important. It is the enabler, as I mentioned in the previous slide, enabling manufacturers. The software, the technology, it is the enabler, but it's just only one of 4 domains. The 4 domains, you can see them kind of in the center of the slide in those yellow boxes there. Because if we go about, let's say, a digital transformation process, then we really have to address all 4 domains, being processes, structure, people, and then last but not least, the technology. So which tool we use to enable our continuous improvement iteration. That iteration is also visible on the left-hand side of this slide. We really start in the early stages with exploring, right? So what is actually our challenges and our targets? Then we start envisioning, thinking about, what can we achieve? Then we design actually something around that. Then we select the right tool, we execute a project, and then we get into the support mode and evaluate what we have done. And we all work on our progressive insights, but then we start all over again. So that's the key message here. Iterative process, continuous improvement, and that is just so very important to have that business-oriented approach here. So if we look at, let's say, some concrete examples real quick before I give it back to Steve, then from a consultancy standpoint, what is important is, well, let me give you some insight into, say, how actually to approach this digitalization projects. And the consultancy is the very early stage, right? Manufacturers have a certain business goal. I already mentioned that, they might have challenges, but not necessarily a roadmap to success yet. So the consultancy phase is there to really help out to achieve this roadmap step by step. So really understand, what do we want to achieve? That's the first thing. And then how are we going to achieve that? Proper understanding of the business is key, because as we saw, it's not just about introducing another IT application. It's really about ultimately the business improvement. It's not an IT project, right? It's a business improvement project. So that's what the consultancy does. So it just sets us up for success instead of just going ahead and just implement something for the sake of implementing something. Why don't we just really find out how we justify our investment? Then in the next step is the professional services. So then I have another example here in the next slide for professional services, and it will basically give us, in that space, we talk about projects that take the step towards the Industry 4 by implementing tools like a ShopVue MES that have been identified and selected during the consultancy stage as being the best fit based on your business requirements. It's a very exciting phase. There's a lot of changes going on here, and which, by the way, requires quite a strong organizational change management. So keep that into the back of your mind, because we can bring this tool in, but again, think about, that's the technology domain. What about the people domain, right? Our people have to be ready for it as well, because otherwise, if we don't get our tool adopted by our audience within our organization, then the tool can be great, but if our people don't adopt it, then still the project is set up for failure. So organizational change management. But this will be the first time where we get insight into the data. So that's why I'm so excited about it, right? So the first time that we can really use our new tool that we've invested in to do data analytics. And but by the way, I also have to say we'll have to understand that Industry 4.0 is often called out. It's often used also as a buzzword. What does it really mean? Well, it's typically more of an end goal, right? Because most of the time cannot be the logical next step. Many companies actually will still need to get to Industry 3.0 in order to have a proper foundation to make this step to Industry 4. So and this is very common. We see that a lot. So that's definitely something to be ashamed of. It's really like this is so important because if you look at the different industrial revolutions, then the previous revolution always provided a foundation for the next revolution. That means that if we want to get to Industry 4, you better be Industry 3 compliant to have that strong foundation. And I can tell you that that is already a good step. So step by step approach, make it manageable. Last but not least, when we get into the support services, that means that we've gone through consultancy and project implementation, and we get into early life, but also long-term support. This support, as I mentioned already earlier, it shouldn't be very reactive. We should not just respond to, let's say, oh, there is an issue. It is really proactive, okay? There will be a lot of new insights, the progressive insight that comes with installing and integrating a new tool. We say, oh, would this be possible? Oh, what about if we do this? And there's a lot of people that will have those insights, which is great. And here we close the loop and go back to the consultancy phase and look how can we actually realize all those progressive insight, these new benefits from that from that investment in that tool, and maximize the ROI, so the return of the investment into that tool. And the key here, really, it is all driven by the data analytics that will be provided by that very tool. And with that, I'm going to give it back to Steve. Thank you very much.
Robert, thank you. All right, so this is the time in the presentation where we bring you all back to the forefront. We have another poll question we'd like to ask you to participate in. So Tom, if you wouldn't mind flashing up poll question number 2 to the audience. We'll give you guys about 45 seconds or so to review it and answer.
Okay, it's on the screen now.
Excellent, thank you so much. You know, and Robert, I wanted to inject during a lot of your presentation because I see just a lot of synergies with how some of our leading customers look at that enterprise architecture model, right, where they're collecting data from multiple data sources, right? They've got that data lake in place so they can slice and dice and parse the data, look at it from every operational perspective possible. You know, I've worked with a number of consulting firms over my 20 years, and I really like the methodology that ATS brings. It's an incredibly deep framework. All right, folks. So as you take a look at poll question number 2, we're going to give you another 15 seconds to provide your answers. As we did the first time, we're going to take a look at the results, and Tom will share the results with the audience verbally. Then we'll go back and compare the results to our friends at LNS and others. So Tom?
All right, I'm just closing the poll now, and I'll share those on the screen. So we've got a couple of people who have gone for IT and operations, with a couple more for data science, but the clear winner is cross-functional team with 60%.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's take a look then. Let's jump in and see how that compares. So the last section of today is how can you transform your organization, not just spin your wheels, with more tools, right? So getting the right tools in place. We're going to talk about data and analytics to start, certainly, and then a little bit more around the MES program. So we're a little bit different in the results today, right? So we're heavily leaning towards cross-functional team. Personally, that's where I'd like to be. That's where I think you've got the best minds from IT, operations, business analysts, and engineering driving that information to the forefront. But ultimately, in most organizations, IT is sort of that tip of the spear and leaning heavily on operations. So maybe a little deviation in the response, but don't feel slighted because I tend to land in the cross-functional team myself. So, but it's definitely a very interesting set. It's all about building your team, right? And if you have a cross-functional mindset, that means you've got IT, you've got operations, you've got engineering, you've got every organization, every element of your organization providing input to make sure you're getting the right information across the organization. So appreciate the responses in that, and good job on that. So we've talked a little bit about ShopVue. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it today, but it is our MES platform of choice. We've been in business for 40 years. We really take a crawl, walk, run approach with our customers, and we really take a pragmatic approach to make sure we put the right framework in place. So when we work with Robert and his team and our customers to implement an MES platform, we really are looking at the entire manufacturing environment and the value chain for every customer and saying, okay, MES is a part of it. It's a key part of it. As Bob Hansen says, it's his neural network. But we look at how can we impact the areas of operations. So we start at labor management. So we provide an integrated attendance and time tracking solution so that employees can clock in, clock out. They can manage their time, manage their information in this area. We kick that information over to your payroll system or your HR systems to make sure that the two stay in sync, but your operations folks have one interface to manage their time and their efforts, and then move into actually doing the job that they're hired to do. And that's where we get into the digital factory and advanced manufacturing. So we provide tools, these modules for our customers to really move away from those paper travelers, get into a digitized environment, be able to manage their people's schedules on a finite level, move into direct machine integration. So being able to capture information from those machines. You remember that slide we showed earlier with the sensors and the bots and whatnot. We're collecting that information into ShopVue so that can power your analytics. We'll talk about that in a moment. And making sure that our customers know that they have full cradle to grave traceability. We have many customers in a variety of regulated industries that have either FDA compliance or ITAR compliance that they have to adhere to. Cradle to grave traceability of every step of the process is incredibly important, right down to the component level. While we're providing this capability, we also are spoon feeding your operators. So you've heard of the term electronic work instructions, digital instructions, one and the same. We're really helping the operator step by step, making sure they have the right information at their fingertips to do the job that they need to do. And we can even provide validations and approvals and checkpoints in that process using the DI module as well. And then lastly, for that smart factory, that is taking information from everywhere, we have a suite of APIs that ultimately help you interface with your machines, your sensors, your ERP systems, your PLM systems, etc. And then also allowing you to leverage the analytics platform to make sure you can accurately represent how your plant is working. So now that we've looked at an MES platform, what about the analytics piece? What is ShopVue manufacturing analytics, and how does it fit into the big picture? So ultimately, manufacturers can't be everywhere. People can't be everywhere. You've got people running all over the plant. You're collecting information from various sources, getting access to real-time information for your given role. For example, as a supervisor, I may need to look at my staff's week, and I may need to reallocate resources. Being able to see quickly where my staff is each day of the week, what they're working on, what their tasks are, is critical to making sure production is continually evolving and staying on track. Just one example. We started this journey with analytics about 2 years ago when we decided as a company to stop building our own custom dashboards and reach out to industry third parties. This came out of our customer advisory board meeting where our customers said, stop it, go partner with a leader in the space, give us a tool that we can use for not just your use at ShopVue, but others. So we did some extensive research, and ultimately we selected Click. There's a lot of great BI platforms out there, but we found that these guys with 50,000+ customers, super great people to work with, really extendable product and platform, and ability from a tool set perspective to quickly build dashboards for customers. And it's been a great partnership, as you can see there in the leaders quadrant on the Gartner BI platform report. So we're happy with that choice. It's proved to be a very good one. So why do you need production analytics, or why would I want production analytics? Ultimately, success in manufacturing means you know what's going on. You can see what's happening in the plant because you have the right information at the right time that allows you to take a look at that information, look at the KPIs across the organization, and ultimately understand what's happening. So you see it, you understand it, and then ultimately that allows you to then predict what's going to happen next. And that's all part of the evolution as well. A couple of examples here, just some dashboards we've got. So how do we measure the production visibility? So we've got an example here of a machine status report and a work center report. I'll go into a little bit more detail on our OEE report here. So you can see what the work point is, what its overall equipment effectiveness is, its availability rate, its performance, its quality. These are all sort of standard out-of-the-box dashboards that we offer our customers. You can tweak them, you can dial them in a little bit, or you have the tools so you can actually create custom dashboards that meet your operations. But we polled over 100 ShopVue customers 2 years ago and said, rank, we gave them 35 dashboards that manufacturers tend to use and say, rank these, let's stack rank them and tell us what you need in an out-of-the-box dashboard reporting tool. So we've got 15 to 16 now dashboards that come with the solution that are very dialed in and don't require a lot of configuration. Here's another good example of a machine status. You can see the machine number, its status, when it's been running since, and part numbers, any orders that are at that machine. We even go further into the department activity. So you can go department by department, you can go person by person, and we even go a little bit further into statistical process control. We have customers that ultimately really are asking us to say, we need data science. We need to dig in and ultimately understand how we can monitor process behavior, discover issues in our internal systems, and basically find ways to improve production. So this does bring us to the end of today's presentation. Tom has been monitoring the chat for us. I do see a few questions in there. Tom, I will let you ask the questions, and either Robert or I will respond depending on the question that you ask.
All right, yeah, we have got a few here. Obviously, if anyone else has a question right now, feel free to enter it in the chat box in the control panel. So first up, we have multiple plants. Can we use an analytics platform to consolidate the data and report by site, division, or across the enterprise?
I'll give you a ShopVue answer, I suppose, and then Robert, if you want to add in. So that's not at all uncommon. For example, I've got a customer up in Ontario that has two primary divisions. They have a tooling and a plastics division. They use the ShopVue analytics platform to help report on downtime to the site level. So they're using the analytics that come out of the box, but they're also taking that information and pushing it out to an enterprise BI platform. So they have the ability to look at that data from an operator's perspective, but then push that data out to their data scientists or what have you for much broader application of that information. I don't know, Robert, if you care to add to that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Steve. So this is definitely one of the benefits of this of the analytics platform, especially combined, let's say, with a cloud-based solution where you'll be able to compare side by side multiple plants. So it's no longer within the four walls of one plant and within the four walls of the other plant. There can be one dashboard, one report where you start at enterprise level and then drill down as you see fit. So that's definitely one of the big advantages of that.
All right, thank you, Robert. Tom, any other questions?
Yes, next question. What percentage of your customers have a BI or analytics strategy?
So somebody was paying attention when we showed, we spoke to a strategy versus initiatives earlier on. So thank you for that question for sure. From a ShopVue perspective, I would say most customers have a strategy or an emerging strategy to turn their data into actionable continuous improvement initiatives. Historically, companies started with a dashboard to show real-time status of, say, a machine, right, or a work center, or a specific area. But I'll reference Windsor, I'll reference Bob Hansen, who I mentioned earlier. Having that big data lake strategy layered on top of operational data is becoming, I would say, at least 50, if not greater percent of the time that we work with our customers. That's my perspective from ShopVue. I'm sure ATS, which has a broader perspective of manufacturing and excellence, may have some additional comments.
No, that's right. Because if you think percentage-wise, then that's actually pretty high. What we see, right? So a lot. I would almost say most, if not all, customers do have BI or analytics strategy. There's just obviously a huge difference because a strategy can be small or it can be huge. Also depends on the size of the company. So we see all different kinds of flavors there. But to your point, Steve, the data lake is definitely something that will add value here because all of a sudden it allows for accessibility, right, by multiple users, not only, let's say, people that take something out, so the human users, but all the system users, right? So you get multiple inputs and multiple outputs, into your data lake and out of your data lake, and you can analyze the data over and over again. Again, we go back to those iterations for continuous improvement. So you keep your raw data in your data lake and keep analyzing it to uncover those trends that otherwise are not immediately visible, especially if it's still paper-based.
Yep. Great. Tom,
Okay.
any other questions?
Yeah, next question we have. I'm building an in-house team to formalize our company's CIP. What skills are most critical to ensure success?
Well, they're building a team. That's a great starting point, because getting the right people in place ultimately is gonna be a tremendous help. I would say, ultimately, if I think of my client set, one customer that jumps out to me is a company called SAFT, S-A-F-T. They were looking for a very solid mix of data analytics. IT had their requirements, engineering and ops had their requirements, and ultimately it goes back to how the audience answered the poll today, right? Is getting that cross-functional team in place that ultimately helps understand what the requirements are, what needs to be delivered, so that the business can assess, are they running properly. Jill was very focused on data quality and data management to make sure that the data work was working hard for them. They were held to a very high regard in terms of ROI. So every little data project that she initiated was led by a cross-functional group and had to have a rock solid ROI. And they've been very successful with it. I think that's probably the customers I work with most, along with maybe Bob and a few others, that it's best to be able to provide a response to that question. It was a great question.
All right, I do have one that's just come in right now. Where I work, we have data available in multiple databases, MES, within machines, etc. Very difficult to access and join it all unless you're a specialist with lots of time. Any recommendations?
Well, I don't know what that MES is, so I'll say from a generic perspective, absolutely. Any MES platform should provide you the ability to extract that data into a BI platform. Whether that's Click or Tableau or Power BI is somewhat irrelevant, right? But being able to access that data into a BI platform is important. I think what we try to do on the ShopVue side is we try to provide very deep, well thought out dashboards specific to operations in an MES platform, so that you don't have to have that specialist. But in the instance where you don't have that internal reporting tool within the MES platform, where the customer reports aren't right or the dashboards aren't right, leveraging a third-party tool, a BI platform, and a resource from your IT folks is probably going to be required.
Yeah, it sounds like we're dealing with also with good amount of data silos here. So that again goes back also to what you mentioned, Steve, about make sure you break the data silos, and through integration of all your different sources. Integration is not necessarily just connecting everything to everything. There are also multiple options for that. So really you have to think that through, because just integration won't really bring that. The integration should provide an added value, for example, in the form of ShopVue analytics, right? So even though you have that connectivity, you also want the contextualization of that data to turn it into information. So those are a couple of key things to keep in mind there.
All right, there's one last question here. We have access to a lot of production data that we collect for our customers, but most of it is on paper travelers. How do I make that data useful?
So I would say this, Robert. I'll take a first crack at this. So you remember earlier we talked about the different types of analytics. We talked about descriptive analytics and diagnostic analytics. Those really are the analytics of looking back. So getting the paper traveler data into a functioning system is the first step, right? Then you've now set the foundation, kind of like that industry 3.0 versus 4.0 topic that Robert spoke to. So getting that data into the system so that you can harmonize that data and now begin to build off of that data will allow you to get to those more progressive and mature stages where you're doing predictive analytics or even prescriptive analytics. So I think ultimately that would be where you'd need to start.
Yeah, that's absolutely. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Digitalization is key here. I mean, it will help to make that data available to other people, but not only people, also to other systems that might actually want to use that data in real time within an organization, right? And it allows for contextualization, as I already mentioned, to actually help turn data into information. And then you can go that extra step by, and that should be a phased approach, by the way, adding the artificial intelligence, the AI, on top of that. And this will automate a good portion of the analysis and will provide direct insights that actually help the decision making at decision time, not after the fact.
Yep, excellent point.
All right, and that is all the questions we have for now.
All right, then I guess to wrap things up, I guess a call to action for those of you who joined us today. First off, thank you for spending some time with us. We hope that you found the session helpful. If you're, ultimately, if you're ready to have the right data at the right place at the right time to make the right decisions, we would love to have a chance to talk with you, whether it's, if you're looking at ShopVue as an MES platform or ATS as a trusted consulting partner to help you build those right processes and optimizations. We would very much welcome the opportunity to deliver a smart digital experience for you and lead your transformation. We'll make sure that everybody gets a copy of today's presentation and the recording as well. We very much thank you for your time, and on behalf of myself, Steve, Robert, and Tom, we hope you have a very good rest of your day today. Thank you, everybody.